Okay, tonight is the last session of the series that we began several months ago, The Essentials of Interpersonal Relationships. The first part of the series dealt with husband and wife, man and woman, the various roles, the relationship between them, including marriage, the various components of how to maintain one's marriage, why to avoid divorce, and when unfortunately divorce may be the only recourse. We went on to discussing the relationship between parents and children, and the reverse, children and their parents. And now we're holding at the very end. We're going to discuss partnerships, neighbors, but more importantly, I'm going to cover friendships. And when we cover friendships, I'm going to reveal to you how to know who is a true friend. Something I think that every one of us would want to know. Just a brief introduction. The Torah obviously puts an emphasis on husband and wife relationships, the importance of that, preserving the marriage intact. There's definitely a great emphasis on chinuch hiladim, raising one's children, kibud avaim, honoring one's parents. These are all important relationships. Nevertheless, the Torah says, although the focus of all your attention will be at the home, your wife, the husband, the children, it does not mean that you need to limit your love and your friendship. The home will always be the center, the most important. That's priority number one. But do not limit yourself. You can extend your love and friendship to others, and one needs to. Because a great deal of the mitzvot in the Torah are mitzvot ben adam lechavero, between man and his friend. Not only do we have mitzvot ben adam lamakom, between us and the Almighty, we have many mitzvot that apply to our friends and to our neighbors. And in the same way that one needs to learn how to succeed in marriage, there's no doubt that if one wants to succeed in life, whether it's in business, whether it's with his friends, there are certain rules that one needs to learn and one needs to follow. Since there are many mitzvot and there are rules, it is not a good idea for one to close himself up and become a hermit. Because the only way to learn the rules, the only way to fulfill these mitzvot is to interact. In Judaism, we need to interact with other Jews. We can't go off and live somewhere far away where there is no synagogue, where there's no mikveh. It's impossible. We will be missing out on many mitzvot. In Judaism, there is continuous interaction. Many of the mitzvot rely and depend on this interaction. If you read the Torah, you will find that the Torah goes out at length to discuss and to make us aware of the sensitivity of widows, of orphans, of converts, of goyim, of servants or slaves, of employees, of those who have borrowed money from us, of those who are poor, and even those who we consider our enemies. There's a certain sensitivity that we have to show all of these. We don't have that much time to go into each one of those areas, so we'll only briefly talk about neighbors and partners. And the reason why it's important to talk about neighbors and partners is because we're much more in touch with them just about on a daily basis. You have neighbors, and for those who have partners, you see them, you speak to them almost daily. So it's important to know how to interact with them. So before we discuss friendships, I just want to go over briefly some basics about partners and neighbors. Every morning, many of us say a prayer. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He should spare us from Adam Ra, from a Yetzera, from Havera, from Shachenra, Mipegara, Ainara, Lashonara. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to spare us from evil people, bad neighbors, bad friends, and the like. What did the rabbis have in mind when they said Me'adam Ra? They had in mind that there should be no one out there that should interfere with our progress. We want to progress, we want to advance in life spiritually. We want to become better people. And there are certain individuals out there are certain elements that can interfere with that. So we ask Hashem, may there not be anyone that will interfere us, that will disturb us from fulfilling the mitzvot, from advancing in life. Mishachen ra, why do we say from a bad neighbor? It's not what you think, that bad neighbors are just troublemakers. What the rabbis meant by bad neighbors is that if one lives close to someone who's really bad, someone who's evil, oy l'rasha ve'oy l'shchino, if something bad happens to your neighbor, it may affect you by association. The fact that you were his neighbor, the fact that somebody may have been living in Sodom ve'Amorah, like Lot, had he had no merit, he would have had the same fate as the people of Sodom and Amorah, but he was spared. So you don't want to have bad neighbors. You don't want to live around bad neighbors. And then you have Havera. We don't want to be affected by a bad friend, because from one's friend one learns, one assimilates his ways. So we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our prayers to spare us from all these elements. Rabbis also tell us, Arhek mishachen ra ve'al titchaber l'rasha in Pirkei Avot. Stay away from bad neighbors, stay away from bad people. On the other hand, they tell us that sometimes tov shachen karov mi'ach rachok. Sometimes you may be fortunate and have a good neighbor who will be better to you than your own brother, because your brother happens to live many, many miles away, and unfortunately many brothers are not in touch. And sometimes a good neighbor can be a great asset, and you can have a wonderful relationship with your neighbor, a better relationship than with your own brother. It is possible. What is the sensitivity, or what can go wrong with neighbors in partnerships? The rabbis tell us as follows. There are certain areas in life where people have a weakness. One of the areas that most people have a weakness is gezel. Gezel does not mean highway robbery, to steal, to rob. It could mean to cheat. It could mean to lie. It could mean not to pay on time. And when it comes to partnership, there's a great nisayon. There's a great challenge when it comes to money. You're challenged, you're tempted to not to tell the truth, to take more money, to not report everything. So there's simply more challenges in partnerships than there are in other areas. In other words, with other relationships, especially challenges that have to do with money. There are also challenges with lashon hara and with kina, with jealousy and with slander. And as a result of all these challenges, sometimes because of a partner, one's own family falls apart, because the wives of the partners get into fights as well. It can affect the entire family. There could be what they call in English a family feud as a result of a bad partnership. And the same is true with shchenim. As I said earlier, neighbors and partners we deal with almost on a day-to-day basis. We have more to do with them than with others. And because of that, there are many more challenges and many problems that can arise, lashon hara and the like, that could lead to trouble. Therefore, it is always advised, if you can avoid partnerships, avoid them, because most of them don't succeed. That's what I've been told by people who have had them, and that's what I've learned, that most of them do not succeed, unfortunately. And we're talking about even partners who are brothers. And you would assume that they're brothers, so they're from the same parents. But so what? Because of the challenges, because of the yetzer, the temptations that exist in this kind of a business, they don't always succeed. But if you are in a partnership, it just means that you have to be extra careful, extra sensitive to these problems that can arise. There's one partnership, however, that is successful. Anybody know which partnership that is?
Father and son?
No. A partnership that is always successful, the partnership with Hashem. And there was once an individual who just wasn't doing well. No matter what he tried, every business that he tried, he didn't do well. He went into a partnership with someone, it didn't work out. Everything did not work out. So one day he decided, you know what, I'm going to take Hashem as a partner. And he says to Hashem, you know what, Hashem, whatever I make, 50% to you. 50%. He's an equal partner. And from that day on, he succeeded. People wanted to know what is his secret. How did he succeed? He says, I have a great partner. Who's that? Hashem. he gets 50% of what I make. I promised and I keep my promise. And he succeeded. That's a good partnership.
Is that more than Taylor?
More than Taylor. Yeah. Anyway, these two areas, partnerships and neighbors, require a lot of attention. It's not easy to get along with one's neighbor, depending on who the neighbor is. And as I said, with partnership, it could also not necessarily work out, even though you may have been good friends in the past or even relatives. It's tricky. I want to, however, spend more time about friendships. What is a friend? Well, depending on which language you speak here, there are many ways, many words for friends. In English you have friend, you have acquaintance, you have a colleague. In Hebrew you have re'a, amit, and haver. These are the basic ways to describe friendship. In Farsi, you also have different words to describe friendships. The basic one is dust. You have yar. And you have one more. I think I wrote it down here. Let me see. Ashnai. Yeah. Basically, different ways of calling friends depending on your level of friendship with that individual. Either he's a colleague, or he's an acquaintance, or he's a real friend. Was I right? Did I miss something? Yeah. Rafiq is an Arabic word. That's why I was going to say that next. In Arabic, you have sahib, Rafiq, and sadiq. Depending on the level of friendship. So Rafiq is not a real Persian word. That's why I didn't use it for Farsi. Yeah. Yadid? Yadid and Habib are just descriptions of endearment. It's a more of an adjective. It's a close relationship. But you may be right. There are additional words. I just chose a few examples. What is the exact difference between them? Haber is a simple one. Haber comes from the word hibur, connection. You have a connection, a simple connection, very low level. You know the person. You have not too much to do with him. And then there's something called the amit. The Torah says, "Ochiach tochiach et amitecha." Your amit is closer to you. You have more to do with him. He could be your business partner. He could be your neighbor. He could be your havruta that you study with him. You have more influence over him. As a result of that, since you have more to do with him, the Torah commands us, "Ochiach tochiach et amitecha." This kind of a friend, you're actually required to give musar, to rebuke him, to criticize him if necessary, and to show him the right way. You have more to do with him. He's closer. But the ultimate friend, who's very close, is called re'ah. Re'ah, the Torah says, "Ve'ahavta lere'acha kamocha." You should like your friend like yourself. Now, people misunderstand this mitzvah. How could you like somebody as much as you like yourself? So the rabbis tell us the simple interpretation of that pasuk is, don't do unto him what you don't want him to do unto you. Treat him as though in the same way that you would want him to treat you. That's the simple interpretation. But there's a deeper interpretation here. The Torah is actually telling us, "Ve'ahavta lere'acha kamocha," get up and search yourself a friend, at least one in the entire planet, that you can like yourself, that you can completely devote yourself to him and be true friends. It is possible, and that is why the Torah says le re'acha. It doesn't say ve'ahavta et re'acha kamocha, because not everybody is like you. You know, some people are more similar to you, some are less similar to you, but le re'acha kamocha means go out and find someone that you could show all this love, and that individual exists out there if you look for him. If you really look for him, there is an individual, at least one, that you can show all that love to. And the rabbis tell us in different words in Pirkei Avot, "Kne lecha haver." It's the same idea, acquire a friend. When it comes to a rabbi, the rabbis tell us, "Aseh lecha rab," make yourself a rabbi, appoint one, designate, choose one, that you will rely on him, you will speak to him, ask your questions, clarify your doubts. You need to have someone that you feel close to. So it says, "Aseh," make yourself. But when it comes to a friend is even more important. It says, "Kne," kinyan, acquire one, even if it costs you a lot of time and effort. Go after it, pursue it. It's very important. Elsewhere the rabbis tell us, "Derech tov she'yidbak ba ha'adam something that is a good idea for someone to pursue is a Haver Tov. And as Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz said in one of his speeches, that a good friend is so valuable because his words, the words of a good friend, can inspire you much more than 1,000 speeches of the rabbi. It's a good friend. You trust him. You know that what he's saying is to your benefit. It could therefore be a tremendous asset. There's a saying, and I have a whole lot of sayings, but we'll keep it for the end. It's easy to acquire an enemy, but very difficult to acquire a friend. However, just like when we spoke about in marriage, there are several components that bring people together. Some of those components are pretty much the same in friendship. One of them is good chemistry. Some people simply are attracted to each other, they have good chemistry. And others are attracted because of the ma'asim. Ma'asim means that they simply behave well with each other. They interact well with each other. So if you have a combination of the two, you have good chemistry, and you have ma'asim hadadiyim, you have mutual respect, good behavior, then that's the basis for a good relationship. As the saying goes, if you want a friend, you need to be a friend. In other words, it just doesn't come by itself. You need to prove yourself. So that requires, besides good chemistry, it requires ma'asim. According to the Kabbalah, there are some individuals who are very much attracted because they are from the same Shoresh HaNeshama. They are from the same soul, same root of the soul. And they are so attracted that they have a tremendous high level of telepathy between them. They can actually read the thoughts of the other one. Before the other one even begins to say something, they already know what he or she is going to say. They can actually feel. Telepathy comes also in various levels. There's one level of telepathy that the experts call it a mini clairvoyance, which means you know the phone is going to ring and who it's going to be. Or the phone is ringing and you know who's on the other side of the phone. It's a certain sensitivity, and the Goyim are not sure where that comes from. But by us it is written, in the Kabbalah it is mentioned, that it has to do with the Shoresh HaNeshama sometimes, or it could also be the mazalot. Certain mazalot are more in tune with each other. So what you see here is that there are certain individuals who by nature will be very much attracted to each other, but that is not enough. There has to be ma'asim, there has to be mutual respect, there has to be other elements in order to preserve a friendship, just like you have some elements that are needed to preserve a good marriage. Because a marriage could start off on the right track, but later it deteriorates. So in order to preserve it, you have to follow certain rules. Same thing with friendship. By nature, they can be very close, but just like a beautiful garden, you need to upkeep it and maintain it. The same thing with a friendship. There are certain things you want to avoid, and there are certain things that you want to do. What should a good friendship avoid? Anybody know? There's something that a good friendship, they're very good, they're very close friends, and they need to avoid.
Loaning money.
What? No.
Jealousy?
Mishle tells us, Shlomo Melech has good advice for friendships. Maybe if we have time, we'll go through some of it. He says, don't visit your friend too often, because he might get sick and tired of you after a while. Yeah, don't visit too often. Too often is twice a day. There's some who just are nagging and come, and they're good friends, but after a while it's like tuna fish. You start eating it, and after several weeks you get tired of it. Or any food, anything that you have too much of it, after a while you get used to it, right? What did we say when we talked about marriage? That the Torah keeps the husband and wife apart for 12 days. When they get back together, they have a mini honeymoon. Even after 50, believe it. Yes, even after 50, husband and wife can have a good relationship if they follow certain rules. So the Torah provides a distance of 12 days, which helps in creating a little bit of harmony. Rabbis tell us, be careful with the kavod of your friend. You're concerned about your own kavod, be also concerned about the kavod of your friend. They tell us, b'tzedek tishpot amitecha, judge your friends favorably, give him the benefit of the doubt. All of this helps in preserving a friendship, in strengthening a friendship. You don't accuse him, you don't doubt him, you don't suspect him. You give him the benefit of the doubt. You respect him. But this is all basic. When it comes to real friendship, judging one favorably is not enough. There's one midah. There's one level which is higher, which is even more powerful than giving somebody the benefit of the doubt. And that is what Solomon tells us, Al kol peshaim techaseh ahava. Even if you know for a fact that your friend committed a fault and did something wrong, if there is true love, Al kol peshaim techaseh ahava. Over all faults, love covers up. If you love somebody very much, then you're willing to overlook his faults, his or her faults. If there is a lack of love, then obviously everything makes a difference. And you're disappointed, and you begin to criticize, and this thing hurts you, and this thing bothers you. On the highest level of love, you're willing to overlook everything. There's a saying in Chazal, the rabbis tell us, when there's true love between two individuals, even the hole of a needle is not small enough for them to sit together. When two people hate each other, even the entire world is not big enough, in other words, to hold them. In other words, when there's true love, you can share a mattress that is 12 inches wide. That's just another way of putting it. In other words, you can somehow make it work, even if you have little. Yes?
You told us once when it came to marriage, sometimes if there's a conflict between husband and wife, the rabbis have told us this concept of giving in. What happens with friends?
I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. What describes the most powerful friendship of all? The most powerful love. No, what describes? No, not the video. What describes it? How can you put it in words? How could you describe what's the most powerful love? How could you describe it?
Unconditional love.
Right? Ahava shelo tluya bedavar. That's true. That is, in English, that's called platonic love or altruistic love. Yes, but that's very difficult to explain because, okay, ahava shelo tluya bedavar, unconditional. But how do we see it in real life?
Love is love.
Yeah.
They're going through a painful time, we're hurting too. Because we feel their pain.
Yeah, you could say that. That may be true as well if you feel someone else's pain. But we are trained to feel every Jew's pain. So where is there something unique about a very powerful relationship? So I'm going to tell you what it is. Shlomo Melech tells us there are three descriptions. One is called Azak HaMavet. That the love is so powerful, is so strong, like death. Now what does that mean? What Shlomo Melech meant is in describing the relationship of Am Yisrael with the Almighty, that we are even willing to sanctify His name by, in other words, by going al Kiddush Hashem, by being killed, to sanctify His name. We're willing to die in the relationship between us and Borei Olam. As far as human relationships, what this means is Azak HaMavet. It is so difficult for you, like death. What does that mean? You need to have something. You can't let go of it. As the English saying is, as the English saying goes, only death will part them. In other words, when a relationship is such that they can't let go of each other, they can't be without each other, that it's very powerful. It's just a description of how powerful this is. They can't be without each other. They can't let go of each other. They need each other. That is one description. The second description is that there's a certain amount of possessiveness. Imagine a husband who sees his wife talking to other men. She's not doing anything. She's just having a very pleasant conversation, and it bothers him. He wants his wife all for himself. Is that good or bad? It's good. I mean, it shows how attached he is to her. That's what the Zohar says. The Zohar says in a good, loving relationship, there is kin'ah. There's a certain amount of jealousy or possessiveness. That's number two. Number three, there's something called ahavat nefesh. Ahavat nefesh, there's no word for it in English. The best word is in Portuguese. And there's only one individual here who will understand me.
What is
Saudades.
Saudade.
Yeah. There's no other word in English. But the closest word for it in English means that you miss someone. Or in Hebrew, yesh lecha gaguim alav. In other words, that you really miss the individual. You really want to be with them.
It's like a soulmate.
Right. You feel bad when they're not there. These are just descriptions of how strong a relationship can be. You've been away for 2 weeks and it feels so long. But now we're going to get to the more important part. How to actually go after and acquire this kind of a loving relationship, which everybody, I think, in this room would want to have. So the rabbis tell us, advice number 1, you want to pursue this, you want to have something like this. Number 1, ha'aver retzoncha mipnei retzon chavercha. You have to sometimes be willing to forgo. In other words, to give in. And what that means is, sometimes you have something in mind, and your friend has something completely opposite in mind. And you can't have it both ways. So the Rabbi tells us, if you let go of your wishes, and you do what his wishes are, that will help build such a relationship. You don't always insist on you getting what you want, on you being right. That's number 1. Number 2, which the non-Jewish world emphasizes too, Hakshev oznecha ledivre chaverecha. Pay close attention. There's a lot of people who, when they are spoken to, they don't hear well. They simply talk back. Listen to him or her. And this is true by husband and wife too. To pay attention, to be a listener, to pay close attention. And number 3, the rabbis tell us, if you want to form a good relationship with your friend, then actively pursue his welfare, his benefit. And what this means, this actually is an important way of detecting if you have a true friend or not. If this individual usually is interested in his own benefit, he always comes and asks you for favors. 75 or 80% of the time he needs you instead of him offering to help you, then he's thinking more about himself. Whereas if he's continuously, actively, 70-80% of the time trying to figure out how to make you happy, whether it's your birthday, whether it's your anniversary, whether it's, just a favor you asked of him and he comes right away and doesn't put up a big fight, doesn't find excuses. He's noseh v'noten betovatcha. He puts an emphasis, he shows that this is important to him or her. He's actively pursuing your tovah, and that's a good friend. But how do you trust one? How can you know for sure if this individual is trustworthy or not? Maybe he's just putting up a good front, a good face. Is there any way that you can know for sure if this is somebody that you should form a bond? Because once you become very close to someone, you may, of course, tell them everything that's on your mind, even the number of your safe, right? You're going to trust everything. So you want to know, is this man trustworthy or not? So how can you know if you can trust him?
Shlomo Melech said in Mishlei, how you feel about someone is the way they feel about you.
Yeah, that's something else. We're talking about trusting someone right now. Will he make a good friend? Right? You're just beginning to get to know him. Well, obviously you don't want to trust someone right away, right? But what? Right? It's just, right. Respect versus suspect. But what should you look out for? What?
He's not cheap.
No, that's not necessarily. On the contrary, the rabbis tell us, be careful with a friend who's always flattering you, always praising you and saying good things about you and never telling you off. That's strange. I would think this great friend, he's always telling me how nice I look, how good I am. Only praise, only flatter. No, be careful with such an individual. A true friend will tell you your faults to your face. He will do it gently, hopefully. But he will tell you, listen, you're not right. I'm sorry to tell you. I love you. I care for you. Nevertheless, you're wrong. You made a mistake. If somebody's always flattering you, never tells you that you're wrong, be careful. He's not someone that you can rely on. That's rule number 1. Zohar says, a true friend, a real friend, is concerned about your olam hazeh and your olam haba. He does not only help you in this world with favors, but he looks out after your olam haba. In other words, if you did not do a mitzvah, you did not get up on time one morning, right? He looks out. He's concerned about your olam haba. And the Zohar tells us something else. You want to be careful with people who have a temper. Because if he's a very good friend of yours, and he shows a tremendous amount of temper, be careful. This is someone that you may not want to be friends with.
Talk about kas, remember?
Kas. Because somebody who gets we'll talk about. Don't seek his friendship, the Zohar says. Someone who has a temper. Because the rabbis tell us, Adam nikar bekiso, bekoso, bekaaso. You can recognize people in general, not only your friends, in 3 ways. Bekiso, with his money, whether he spends or not spends, whether he's stingy or not. Bekoso, how he drinks. When he drinks, what he says. Ubekaaso, when he has a temper, how does he control himself? Does he ever have a temper? So a temper is one way of judging if this is an individual that you should associate with, that you should befriend. There's one more thing I think Rav Nachman Bebresla brings down, that whenever there's a good relationship and all of a sudden one of the two of them curses or says a real bad word, that has the effect of leaving a dent in a good relationship. Brit ahava it kalkela, he says, as a result of the words that one of the two may have said. So if a good friend, supposedly a good friend, ever curses or says something terrible, then regardless of how good he was till now, it has had an effect of removing a little bit of that love that existed before. Otherwise, how could he get himself, how could he bring himself to say what he said? So therefore, Brit ahava hit kalkela, it has been ruined. The relationship has suffered as a result of him saying what he said.
Cursing the friend or cursing?
Yeah, the friend.
Oh, cursing.
You know, sometimes you get angry and you say something, it depends what you say. If he said something terrible, something blasphemous, something really not nice, that has the effect of damaging the relationship. It has weakened. And that is why between husband and wife, if they don't seek immediate help, and this builds up over many, many years, it's very difficult to repair later on. You know, if they need help, they should get help right away. And the ultimate test, if this is an individual who you should continue developing a friendship with, is what?
Take rebuke.
Is how devoted he is. How do you test that? Most of you have heard of chesed. Chesed is kindness. What's the true test of kindness? What if somebody's kind at heart? He likes to do people favors. The true test of kindness is when it's difficult for you to do. Let's say a friend of yours asks you a favor. You know what? My flight is leaving tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Can you take me to the airport? And you go to sleep at 12. That means you have to wake up at 3:30 or 4. Would you do that? What if it's your mother-in-law? Yeah. Chesed amiti, true chesed is not when it's easy. When it's difficult, that's when you know if this man is really about chesed or not. Gomer chasadim. The greatest test of friendship is when something is difficult for you to do. Nevertheless, because you're devoted, you're willing to do it. If you're not devoted, then you're not going to do it. That's the ultimate test. So the ultimate test is, in times of need, we know who our true friends are indeed. When we have it, when things are rough. And since I mentioned when things are rough, I'm going to tell you a story. Some of you heard it from me, but it pays to retell it. There was once a father who was giving a speech to his son, that there's something called a true friend, and that friendships are valuable. And the father asked his son, do you have a good friend? And the son was thought that he has many friends, and he says, "Yes, Daddy, I have hundreds of friends." And the father says, "No, that's not possible." He says, "You know what, my son? I only have 1.5." Or he said, actually, "No, I only have a half a friend." "A half a friend," he said. "And you claim you have hundreds of friends?" "Yes, Daddy. Everybody likes me." "Okay, let's test them out. You claim that they're good friends. Let's give them a test." The father took a sheep and slaughtered it, put it into a burlap sack, covered it with blood, and told his son, "Tomorrow night at 1 o'clock in the morning, go to your best friend and tell him that you just murdered someone and that you need to hide the body. Can he do you a favor?" And the son did that. The next night he went to his best friend, his most trusted friend. And his friend sees him. "What are you doing here at 1 o'clock in the morning?" That was his first reaction. Some friend. A good friend doesn't ask questions. "Come in." Right? "What are you doing here at 1 o'clock in the morning?" And he tells him the story. "I have to cover this up, otherwise they're going to start looking for me. They're going to find his body." And he says, "I'm sorry, I don't want to get involved." And he was disappointed. Came home. He told his father, I couldn't believe it. He was my best friend. Some best friend. And he did this night after night. Tried it out with different friends. No one took him in. Comes back to his father and he says, "You know what? Daddy, maybe you're right. But you know what? Could you send me to your half a friend? I want to see what a half a friend is." And the father sent him to his half friend with the same story. 1 o'clock in the morning, the man comes out from the balcony and says, he sees the son of his very good friend. He says, "What can I do for you? Something happened? Something wrong?" Totally different attitude. And he tells him, says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I'll wash your hands, I'll take care of it. Don't worry, just sleep here tonight so they won't find you, they'll be looking for you." And he treats them very nicely. The son went back home and said, "Daddy, this is a half a friend. I don't think there's any better friend than that. He was willing to risk his life. He was willing to do so much for me. What do you call a real friend then, if this is a half a friend?" So the father told him a story about what a real friend is. He says there were once two very good friends. One of them got into trouble. He got into debt. He owed people a lot of money. And as a result of that, they put him in jail. And they gave him time to pay off this loan. And if he was not going to pay off this loan, after 30 days, they were going to hang him. And the guy says, "Listen," the guy told the king, "if you want me to repay this loan, then give me time to go collect, and get this money. But we don't trust you. If we let you go out of prison, you're going to run away." So he says, "I have somebody that will be willing to take my place in this jail, that if I don't come back, he's willing to face the gallows." So the king takes a look at him and says, "You have a friend that is willing to take your place in case you don't come back, in case you run away?" He says, "Yes." And the friend did come and did take his place. 29 days went by. The guy didn't come back. A lot of people run away. Just they run away. And that's what they thought this man did. He ran away to save his own skin. So the next morning they took out his friend to prepare him to take to the gallows. And as they're preparing to take him to the gallows, they hear from a distance horses galloping. The man, the original guy, was coming back with the money. And he said, wait. And he ran to the gallows and took off the rope from his friend and put it on himself. And all of a sudden there was a big fight, a big commotion between the two friends. Who should die? Who should take the place of the other? And the king was sitting on his balcony watching this, and he says, "What's going on over here?" And he called the two of them, and they told him that no one wants to see the other one die. The king says, "That's incredible. I've never seen such a friendship. I want to be your friend too." And that's the end of that story. Of course, the king let them go and became their friend. Another quick story of devotion, of self-sacrifice, which is really the ingredient that you just heard in this story, is with a soldier in the Israeli army called Natan. There was even a song that was composed. I think it happened in the 6-Day War. There was a grenade thrown at a platoon of soldiers. And this young man, this young soldier, threw himself on top of the grenade, which killed him and saved all his friends. I don't think too many people are prepared to do something like that. It takes a tremendous amount of self-sacrifice, of devotion, of mesirut nefesh, to be able to do that for others. As was mentioned before, unconditional love, you have no interest here. They're not your relatives. You're doing this unconditionally, without any reward. They're not going to pay you back. Obviously, this is not expected of us, but it still shows the tremendous capacity to love and to give and to sacrifice. This kind of a love is what Hashem wants of us. Even if they're willing to take, they're willing to take your life. With all your money. That's the ultimate love, when one can give of himself completely to Hashem. I have a question. Let's say somebody is your good friend. You know he's a good friend. And all of a sudden you need $150,000. And you go over to him and you say to him, can you lend me $150,000? I know you have the money in your savings account. And the friend says, I'm sorry. You're my greatest friend, my best friend. I love you dearly, but I'm not willing to give you $150,000. Is he still a good friend?
Yeah.
He's not obligated to give.
What?
He's not obligated.
No, still a good friend.
Go and buy it.
He might.
He's not only a good friend, he's smart. Why? Because especially if this is all his savings. If this is all his savings, he's not obligated to become poor. Because the chances of getting that money back are 50-50. They're 50-50. I'm being optimistic. They're 50-50. Now, if this friend has millions of dollars, so what's $150,000? So obviously it would depend on the circumstances. But if this is all his savings, he's depending on this to marry off his children. He's not obligated to give it. He's still a good friend. He doesn't need to. Right? Chayecha kodem chayecha berecha, the rabbi tells us, your life comes first. If the two friends are walking in the desert, the rabbis tell us, and they have a pitcher of water, they have 4 miles to walk till they get to the next well. If one of them drinks the water, he will survive. If he shares it with his friend, they both die. What should he do?
The Gemara is clear.
The Gemara is clear. If it's your water, you come first. If it's your water.
Even between a father and a son.
Yeah.
The Gemara says.
Right. So anyway, you come first. Hopefully, these situations will not arise where you will be put to the test, like mothers in Auschwitz or fathers were sometimes put to the test. Here are your 2 children. One stays alive, the other one does not. Choose. Very, very painful. It was tremendously painful for a parent to face and to make that kind of a decision. Which son? All my children, you love them equally. So I don't wish it to anybody that he should have to make such decisions and be faced with such complicated situations where you are being challenged in an enormous way, in a very difficult way. But without these challenges, without these situations, there are enough incidents and there are enough examples of where one can see how his friends interact with him or not. In other words, if they're good towards him, if they respect him, or if they're not devoted, not concerned, not interested. I want to finish with what the Hasidim are known for. The Hasidic movement, amongst many things that they have introduced to Am Yisrael, they have put a tremendous emphasis on Dibuk Haverim. Dibuk Haverim means being very close, spending time together. Haverut, being friends, doing things together. And what is this for? In order to promote unity, which is something which is lacking in Am Yisrael. Unfortunately, ever since the destruction of the Second Temple, there has been not an unselfish love, but a sinat chinam, baseless hatred, which is the exact opposite. And the Hasidut has attempted in the past 250 years to break down those barriers. That studying Torah is important, But you also need to have ahva and achdut. Am Yisrael has to be united with a common cause and common goal, because the diaspora has made many differences amongst us. You have what appears to be different kinds of Jews. But let's not forget, we all say the same Shema Yisrael. We have the same Father in heaven. So the Hasidut has attempted to bridge those gaps and to unite all Jews, to bring in happiness, to bring divuk haverim, that one should care for the other, one should do for the other. And that is why they are very strong in chesed, in tzedakah, in gemachim, in helping Jews, especially those who are in need. Last but not least, as was mentioned by you, Shlomo HaMelech tells us, Kamayim apanim lapanim ken lev ha'adam la'adam. If you ever are in doubt if somebody is close to you or not, and you are trying to be close to them, and you are their friend, but you have doubts, and you want to figure out how much do they really love you, and how much do they really care for you, is there any way to figure that out? Without testing them, without going with them with a dead body, and can you hide this for me? Is there any other way to do it? Quietly. Yes, Shlomo HaMelech tells us, Kamayim apanim lapanim ken lev ha'adam la'adam. In the same way that when you look at the water, you see a reflection of yourself. Ken lev ha'adam la'adam. The same is true with people's hearts. The way you feel towards someone, that is exactly how they feel towards you. As long as you have already known each other for a long time. If you've just met, then he or she may have fallen in love, and you're not so crazy about them. Right? But when people know each other for a while, when people know each other already for a while, kamayim lapanim ken lev ha'adam la'adam. The way you feel is exactly the way the other person feels. If you don't really care for him, they don't really care for you. Now, there still can be a small difference. Two people can love each other very, very much, but one is willing to do more. Let's say one of them is sick in the hospital in Cedar Sinai, and you live in the valley. Now, it's pretty far to walk from the valley to Cedar Sinai on Shabbat, right? Especially if it's hot. But there might be this individual who's so devoted and so caring and can't be without you and wants to see you, wants to make you feel good, that they will walk the 3 hours or so that it takes to walk from the valley to Cedar Sinai. When I say the valley, I mean North Hollywood, by the way. Yeah. Right. Yeah, Studio City, even closer. Yeah. Right? That's not so much. 3 hours, but nevertheless, not everyone is capable of willing to do that. It does not mean the other one does not love and does not care. They love and they care very much. They're devoted too, but not everybody has that ability to do what Natan the Hayal did, throw himself on the grenade. So there's different levels of devotion. But nevertheless, the way you feel approximately towards someone else, you want to know how he feels towards you, ask yourself, do you like him or not? Pretty much approximately in the same way you like him or dislike him, he feels the exact same way. That's the best test. Ask yourself, ask your heart. I'd like to just quickly go over with you some pidgamim, some quotations about friends and friendships that will give you an additional idea of what a true friend is and what a true friendship is. This is something that even non-Jews have experienced, and therefore it is true. And I've compiled a few of them that I felt were very relevant and very correct and important. True friendship comes when silence between two people is comfortable. When two friends are really close friends and there's good chemistry between them, they're actually comfortable not talking to each other. They can just sit there and look at each other. Some people are very uncomfortable with that, especially on dates when they go out and they just don't have anything more to say. And they feel uncomfortable. You know, what should I say now? What should I ask him or her? Good friends don't have to talk. They can just sit there and look at each other. The real test of friendship is, can you literally do nothing with the other person? Can you enjoy those moments of life that are utterly simple? Silences make the real conversations between friends. Not the saying, but the never needing to say is what counts. Friends are born, not made. Because some people are just closer by nature, as I explained before. Friendship is a single soul dwelling in two bodies. Friendship is one mind in two bodies. The friend is the man who knows all about you and still likes you. Yes. He knows you with all your faults, but he still likes you. Friendship often ends in love, but love in friendship never. A true friend is the greatest of all blessings, and that which we take the least care of all to acquire. Real friendship is shown in times of trouble. Prosperity is full of friends. Hold a true friend with both of your hands. Lots of people want to ride with you in the limo, but what you want is someone who will take the bus with you when the limo breaks down. The most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen, as I explained before. Just listen. People, perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention. A loving silence often has far more power to heal and to connect than the most well-intentioned words. There is an electricity about a friendship relationship. We are both more relaxed and more sensitive, more creative and more reflective, more energetic and more casual, more excited and more serene. It is as though when we come in contact with our friend, we enter into a different environment. It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages. They can be loving, but they're not friends. They don't talk to each other. And this one is from Persian. The verb to love in Persian is to have a friend. I love you translated literally is I have you as a friend. Dustot doram, right? Or dusit doram, right? Even though love is ishq, no? Yeah. But no, but that it's interesting, no? That to love someone is to have them as a friend. That's the basic expression. And when you say I don't like you, you're simply saying I don't have you as a friend. And last but not least, this is one of my favorite. I value the friend who for me finds time on his calendar. But I cherish the friend who for me does not consult the calendar. I just want to remind you, and with this we'll finish, that a true friend is one of the most precious assets we can ever have. And it is important to have a good marriage, a good relationship with one spouse, obviously to devote time to your friends. But as I said in the very beginning, the Torah does not want us to limit ourselves to just the home, but to extend ourselves out towards all of Am Yisrael, actually towards the entire world, to be on good terms with everybody, but to know what our priorities are. And there is a priority, K'nei lecha chaver. Choose one individual, look for him, make an effort, and you have to work hard at it. It doesn't just come easily. And develop it and preserve it, and you will be very, very happy. Yes?
What you may want to elaborate on, maybe some people might have the situation. The gender of the two friends has to be the same, or it cannot be different. Let's say a co-worker, a man and a woman, could they talk to each other and confide in each other?
No. There can be problems with different genders. Usually very close friendships are of the same gender. Usually, but not always. It is possible for a husband to be very, very close to his wife, and his wife is his best friend. But a wife is not always the man's best friend.
Right.
It doesn't always work out like that, unfortunately. There's certain things that the man wants to speak to another man. The problem is when it's another woman that there could be problems, right?
The Torah discourages that?
No, it doesn't say that it's prohibited, but you have to know your limitations. It becomes more complicated, especially when your wife finds out about it, right? So you have to be very, very careful with that. Obviously, the Torah wants us to form deep relationships with as many people as possible, to be concerned about everybody. But you have to draw the lines. You have to know where to focus, but not to limit yourself to just the home, to extend yourself to others, and to find one, at least one, that you will be completely devoted to. Some of us may have a close circle of friends, 3, 4. Anybody who tells you he has 100, it's like that son who doesn't know what he's talking about. If you try him out, you will be very disappointed. But to have a few close ones, it is possible. And from those few close ones, give of yourself as much as possible, because it's a great asset. There may come a time where you may need their help. Who are you going to turn to? Yeah. Yes?
Can your best friend or your true friend be a non-Jew? Can it be
That's a good question. Can a non-Jew be your best friend? Let's put it this way. A non-Jew can be a very, very, very close friend. The best friend, I wouldn't say so, because the rabbis tell us, kavdeu v'chashdeu on everyone. The rabbis tell us, be suspicious of everyone. Be respectful of everyone and be suspicious. If that non-Jew, all of a sudden, went to church one day and heard a sermon by the priest against Jews, he might change his mind. Right? That could happen. And there were stories of Muslims who were fine with the Jews. And all of a sudden, a new sultan came in, took power, and things changed around. And unfortunately, in Eastern Europe, in Poland, and in Hungary, there were Jews who trusted their neighbors, right, with everything. And as soon as the war broke out, they found out that these were not really true friends. There was a maid in New York, a Polish maid, who was about to leave the home where she worked for all these years, and this Jewish woman, trusted this Polish maid. And as she's about to leave the house, the woman is so nice to her, she gives her a fur coat as a gift. And as she's leaving, actually at the airport, this maid turns around and tells this Jewish woman, "I hate you Jews, you dirty Jews." This woman was smart. She called the police. "This woman took my fur coat." At least she got back her fur coat. You have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. The Polish, unfortunately, had a lot of hatred in them. But there can be some non-Jews who would be very, very close. There are Hasidei Umot Olam, there are righteous Gentiles. But you have to be careful. But they do exist. There can be a very good relationship with someone from another religion. Yes?
I don't understand the concept in the Torah telling you to buy a friend.
Acquire, not buy. Acquire means make it your possession. Don't let go of it. No, not with money. No, what it means is even if you have to work hard and make an effort and spend money, it takes money sometimes to help people. Even if the friendship will develop and come about as a result of an increase in the interaction, and that interaction may be a little expensive sometimes. Your friend just broke his arm and he doesn't have insurance, and you went and took care of it for him. You bought him. In other words, you spent money on him. That's what the rabbis are telling us. Acquire, even if it takes a lot of effort and money, it pays. You'll be very happy. It's a very precious asset. Yes. Right. Yes, you can be very close to you, because you could be from the same Shoresh HaNeshama. You could have a tremendous amount of chemistry and many things in common. So it is possible. Sure. Yes.
You said, Rabbi?
Yeah, go ahead.
How
about saying
Rahman?
in English?
Yeah. No, I'll translate it. Yeah.
already found my best.
Right. Yeah.
Good question.
You're becoming more observant, and he's still secular. Being that you're a good friend, you will have a tremendous impact on him. And you have an opportunity to bring him closer. And since you care about him, you will make an effort. And hopefully he will see that you mean his benefit and you're not trying to trick him. And he will become, Zat Hashem, one of these days. He will become strong himself. That is one of the reasons why a powerful friendship is so important. You actually have so much influence on him. That is why a father who develops a good relationship with his son can be much more effective in giving him musar. So a good friendship is a tremendous asset. Whoever has acquired one should really consider himself fortunate.
Let's say, Rabbi, what you just said, you give Musar to a friend and he accepts it. He says,
Right.
look, I got shalom bias problems. That's nice, but you give me Musar, but I got shalom bias issues. So he's got it caught between his friend's Musar, which is
Right.
very good, and the fact that he's got to please his wife. So is the answer that the wife always comes first, Rabbi?
Yes, the home is the center. Right? You have to preserve that at all costs. It's very important. But you can also be diplomatic and maneuver yourself and make as many people as happy as possible.